Welcome to Murder
and Everything Else.
My name is Joy.
And my name is Cheryl. And Joy and I are two old friends that are going to chit chat about murder and everything else.
Yay! Yay! Just a quick disclaimer that this podcast is not for children. We're going to be talking about online gaming, and some of these games have gun violence and sexual imagery and sexual situations. Please use discretion when listening.
Yes.
All right.
Amen.
So now that we have that out of the way, you want to start with the highs and lows?
Of course I do. Okay, Joy, I'm setting a trend for myself where my high is wrapped up with my low. So I told you this, but this is for the benefit of people that don't know. When I moved to Arizona, I found a hairdresser that I really loved. I still love her, but she was charging $50 at first, and then I don't think it's her. I think it's the salon and the way they do it. It's like when you go to their website, you see them. It's kind of like first tier, second tier, and the top tier the bottom tier is just as talented as the top, but it's like they're allowed to charge more as the longer they're there. So it went from 50 to 65, and I was like, okay, 65, all right. But I usually tip I'm a good tipper. So I tip like 15 on 65. So that's 80 if my math is correct. And then I went to book another appointment, and she went up to 80, and I was like, my hair does not need any color. It's just a cut. It's nothing fancy. And then I was like, oh, you know what? I'm going to grow my hair out long so I never have to cut it. It's like, I'm just going to grow it out long so I can go to a Supercuts if they're even around anymore and just have the bottom trimmed. And I was like, you know what? No, I really like wearing it short. I made an appointment with her because I don't really like to try new people. I was forced to try someone new because I moved out of state. So I had to find someone, right? And I booked an appointment with her anyway for $80. And I was like, oh, I'm going to tip. It's going to be almost $100 for what? So that was my low, because I'm very loyal when it comes to when I find people, a hairstylist. I'm very loyal. I went to the same person in California for 20 years, and he never went up even close to that amount. And I think because I was a longstanding client, even when his prices, he had to, because they have to rent the chair and all that. I'm sure their rent for the chair goes up. So I understand the need for an increase, but he never raised mine very much. And so I made an appointment with her, and he's just eating away at me. I got to tell you that even if I was not so poor, I still wouldn't feel good about paying $100, with tip for a trim. So I asked a good friend of mine for a recommendation, and she also has wavy hair. I have wavy hair, and she's like, she's great. $25. Now we're rolling up into my high. You can tell, right? $25. I'm telling you. I'm like, oh, and I told you I'm going for my haircut now. Pray for me. I told my husband that when I left the door and left the house, and you guys must have done a lot of praying and somebody heard you, because she did a great job. And I tipped her $10, way over 20%. And I walked out of there paying $35. Then I went to Taco Bell. Well, now we're going low again. Went to Taco Bell, went through the drive-thru to get my husband and Kevin and I lunch. And Taco Bell cost me $34.
What? What the hell are you ordering?
I spent $35 with tip for my hair that I was so worried about. And then I just threw away $34 at Taco Bell.
Wait, what are you ordering from Taco Bell that cost $34?
I know. I was kind of like floored when they told me how much it was. I got a Crunchwrap Supreme. 2, I love those things. Oh, you're vegetarian, huh? Are you?
No, I'm not vegetarian. I can't say I am anymore. But I can't eat any of the brown meat stuff from Taco Bell. Reminds me of dog food.
No, it's so good. Crunchwrap Supreme. I think they have a breakfast one now. But anyway, I always get the Crunchwrap Supreme. And then I ordered Kevin 2 Burrito Supremes. and then I ordered four crunchy tacos. And I had a little drink, a little slushy thing. And when they told me
Oh my God.
$34 at the window, I was like,
That's
I just
so
saved all that money on a haircut and gave it to Taco Bell.
that's hilarious. I just went through the drive-through at Taco Bell a couple weeks ago and my kid was in the car and I go, you know, because she's in college, and I was like, if you ever are really wanting to splurge and treat yourself to a burrito, there's this thing called the Fiesta Veggie Burrito. They took all the normal good stuff off the menu, like the tostada, the spicy tostada, which was my favorite.
I
They
know, we
took
used to love
the
that.
yeah, they took the 7-layer burrito off
Oh,
the
they
menu.
did?
Oh yeah, it just pissed me off. I was like, all the veggie items went off the menu. And so now they've
Weird.
replaced the only other thing is the plain bean burrito, which is good as
Hmm.
long as you like onions because they put onions in it.
Yeah, yeah.
Or the other thing is there's this Fiesta veggie burrito. And they put it's just like a normal burrito with like beans and a little bit of rice, guacamole and cheese and whatever, and lettuce. And then they put these little crispy chips in there. So when you bite it, it's like
Oh,
crunchy. Oh,
yes.
it's so good.
That's like the
So,
Crunch Wrap Supreme. It's the soft and
oh,
the crunchy together.
oh,
Yeah.
see, I love crunchy because remember we used to buy chips and put them in our sandwich when we worked at Teleport. Anyway, so I love that like equally squishy and crispy. And
Yes.
so
Yes.
I told her, I go, I can only eat like half of one. So I was like, and it's pretty small, so we
Yeah.
shared one, but it's only $2.50. And so I'm like, so it's a good like vegetarian meal option if you're ever like want a burrito and you're by yourself and you only have like $2 or $3 to spend. And I'm
Oh
sure
my.
I'm sure she's like, yeah, whatever. Like who's gonna buy a half a burrito? you know? But it was great because like I took a bite, then she would take a bite, then I would take, and then by the time we were done, I was like completely, I
That's
felt like
fun.
I had burritos coming out of my ears. And she's like, all right. She's all, I feel like I just had an appetizer.
Exactly. You know what? I've been ordering the Crunchwrap Supreme for so long that I didn't notice that the 7-layer burrito, which was my favorite until the Crunchwrap Supreme came along. I didn't notice it wasn't on the menu. That's why. That's like one of.
Well, I heard that like after the pandemic, because so many people stopped going through like fast food restaurant drive-throughs, that some fast food restaurants, the ones that weren't as popular during the pandemic, really had to scale back their menu options and get rid of all the extra things. And if you think about it, I mean, I don't really think a lot of vegetarian people go to Taco Bell. And I can
Yeah,
tell
it's
you
not the first place you
right.
think.
And I can also tell you that in the South, I don't think anybody goes to Taco Bell. We got a Taco Bell down the road, and I have never pulled into the drive-through and had anyone in front of me. So I'd be
But
surprised if they're selling 20 tacos a day.
you know what's funny though is people like you're a great cook and you eat pretty healthy. I'm not a great cook and I don't eat healthy, but so there's people of all walks of life that love Taco Bell. It's like even though you have a finer palate for like real Mexican food, everybody loves Taco Bell. But here's the thing, there's that joke that there's really only 7 ingredients for like Mexican food and it's just how it's put together, whether it's a taco or burrito or whatever. So like surely they had those 7 ingredients for 7-layer burrito.
Right.
I don't understand.
Exactly.
Like,
I mean, they still have tortillas in there. They still have
yeah,
beans. They still have rice. They still have lettuce. It's like,
cheese.
just put it back together and call it.
Exactly.
If you don't like calling it 7-layer burrito, then just call it like extra stuffed burrito. I mean,
Your
I
own,
don't know.
yeah, you know how you can make your own pizza, right? I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna order 7-layer and they're gonna say, oh, we don't have that on the menu, and I'm gonna say you have those 7 ingredients
You can
plus the
order, here's
tortilla.
what you could do. You could order the Fiesta veggie burrito and then say, okay, there's how many things are in that burrito? And they say 5, go, can you add 2 more things?
And then it's 7-layer. Oh
That's
my
right.
God.
Fiesta
Anyway,
veggie 7-layer burrito. That's
exactly.
funny.
We'll just make up a new thing. But anyway, that's my high and my low. It went from
Right.
low, high, and back to low when
Well,
I spent all my money at Taco Bell that I
it's
saved at the hair
it's
salon.
really nice to know that you guys are keeping the Taco Bell people in
In
business.
in business. Yep.
'Cause I will say that in the South, I don't think Taco Bell is that popular, and I have never, ever heard anyone that I've talked to anywhere in the South say, "I love Taco Bell." I think Taco Bell is a California thing. Am I right?
I
I don't
don't know. I don't know.
I don't know.
I listened to the sesh with these two girls that are cousins, and one of them loves Taco Bell, loves, and they live in Colorado. So I don't know.
Well, I love the hot sauce from Taco Bell, not the mild sauce and not the fire sauce, the hot sauce. And I always ask for extra. And then when I get to the window, I ask for more extra. And then I take the extra packets and I put them in the glove box. And whenever I am eating something in my car, like a sandwich or something in a or whatever, I don't care what it is. I open up the glove box and I take out my extra packets and I pour them on. Or what I do is I bite a hole in one, suck the packet into my mouth, suck out all the sauce, and then take a bite of
But
whatever it is I'm
oh,
eating.
that's a great
Oh,
technique.
it makes everything taste better. And
You
if
know
you
what's
buy the Taco Bell sauce that's in the jar at the grocery store, because they sell the brand, it
they
doesn't taste anywhere near as good
near?
as the stuff in the packets.
I did
And I
not
think it's
even
because
know.
the packets have been sitting in the hot sun for like 10 years, and all that aluminum and plastic is pickled the sauce, and it's so delicious.
It's aged like a fine wine.
That's right.
Well, you know what? You know what? So we could go on all day for about Taco Bell, but I have to throw this in now that you're talking about the sauce. Okay, I used to like the hot. Well, I used to like the mild, then I went to hot, then I like the fire. And then I was like, you know what? Even though I like spicy, it was the flavor of mild that I like better. So while I was eating my Crunch Wrap Supreme, my very healthy Crunch Wrap Supreme, I was eating, and we have salsa at home. We have like pico de gallo, like fresh salsa, not jar or not not in a tin packet. But I can't. It does not taste the same to
It
eat
doesn't
Taco
taste the
Bell
same.
with a different salsa. Like you
It's
have to
true.
have. Isn't that true?
It's
It's
so
so
true. You
funny.
have to have that weird, like, small packet that you
Tinny
bite the corner
taste.
off. Yeah. And also, when you bite the corner off, you have to tear it perfectly because if you tear it and it tears down the side,
The
then
side.
the sauce comes out all weird and drips all over the place. You
Oh
have to
my
it has to come off perfectly right. Otherwise, it's ruined.
it, we have to do a whole show on Taco
That's
Bell. All right. Well, we
great.
better move on to your
Wait.
highs and lows.
Okay, so first of all, this is my high, and I just have to tell you, I heard my recorded ad on Spotify for the first time today. Have you heard it?
Well, I heard the first one and I told you it sounded too soft. So you
Well,
re
go back to Spotify
Okay,
and listen
I
to any
am.
one of our episodes and listen to that. It is so fucking baller. I just have to say, it sounds so good.
I bet
First
it
of
does.
all, I sound like,
A
I don't know,
pro,
some
a
kind of like
pro.
television commercial professional. Secondly, I sound like equally part sultry, part like take command, part mommy. And
Part mommy
whatever it is, it totally works.
works.
Like I could do like books on tape. I'm not kidding you. I was like blown away. I was like, who is that? And I was listening to it and then I was like, holy shitballs, that's me. Anyway, it sounded great. And normally I can't stand the sound of my voice. So
No, you have a
that's
great
my
voice and a
uh,
great speaking voice. But remember, my other friend said you're going to break your arm patting yourself on the back.
that's
But
right. It sounded great. So
no,
that's
I
my
believe it. I believe it. I'm going to listen to it.
yeah, that's my high. And I'm trying to think about the low. The low is that I we've had a lot of technical issues lately, and they're very frustrating. And I have remember when we worked for Teleport and we used to get so frustrated when they'd roll out like we're
Something
rolling
new?
out a new feature for brr, 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 brr," and then you get people calling in. This isn't working. Wah, 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 wah. I want a
Yeah.
refund. I want 2 days refund because and then we would be working and not only are we dealing with angry customers, we're looking at each other going, why did they roll out this new thing when it was working great before and
I
we
know.
all liked it? And so that's kind of where I am right now with
Yeah.
this whole transition with like, I know that change is hard. I know that growing pains are hard, but it's like, my low is that just I feel like every weekend I'm just jumping through all these technical hoops, which
I
rolls
know.
us into our shout out. And that
Yes.
is, I have to shout out the Spotify tech named Alyssa. Who knows? Maybe your name is not really Alyssa. I mean, that's the name that popped
Probably
up
not.
on the bot thing, the chat bot. But I have to just say, Alyssa, you were on the chat with me yesterday for 30 to 40 minutes helping me sort out what I can only call an over 50 hot mess. I did not have to see your face to know that you probably were wondering what kind of fresh hell brain injury I was dealing with. So thank you, Alyssa, for being nice to me and
Oh my
maintaining your
God.
patience and professionalism while
Oh.
I mean, first of all, the fat thumbs, so every other word was like a typo. Secondly, I kept saying like hello question mark, which instead of it doesn't come across as a nice hello, like
No.
hello. It comes across as hello.
Hello? Like,
And
where are you? You
I'm
know
sure
that
Alyssa was dealing with 15 other people in other
exactly.
chat rooms
Yes.
or whatever with problems, but everything
She
that she
sure
told
was.
me to do worked.
Yeah.
So thank you, Alyssa.
Oh, thank you, Alyssa. Except it's not working.
Yeah, right. I know I'm gonna have to talk to someone again this week. I really hope.
Oh my
I
God.
really anyway. So rolling on, we have something super exciting this
Oh my
week.
God.
And
So exciting.
yeah, so this week we have a guest. And this is the first time we've had a podcast guest.
Yeah.
And our guest name is Heidi.
Yay!
And so we are going to bring Heidi online now. How are you doing, Heidi?
Hi, Heidi.
Good, thanks. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for doing this. You are our first guest. This is
That's
so
right.
exciting.
That is very exciting.
So Heidi, just for introduction, everybody already knows your name, but what do you do?
I am currently finishing my master's in physics. I'm about 2 weeks away from defending, so
Oh,
almost done.
wow.
Guys,
That's so exciting.
she
I didn't know that.
yeah, she is legit big brain, okay? So everyone with the small brain, just listen, buckle up because we're working with the big dogs right now.
Yeah.
Oh no.
And she's probably going, oh my God, she probably just listened to us blabbering for 20 minutes going, what have I gotten myself into?
Right? But because of our technical prowess, she wasn't able to just log in at that introduction period. She had to sit and
She
listen
just
through that.
be tortured. Oh, and she was also on for an hour with us trying to figure this
Right.
out.
That's right.
Oh,
Oh my god. Anyway, so this week we're going to be talking about gaming, online gaming and internet games and all kinds of games. And so Heidi's our guest because Heidi likes to play games. And I'm not talking about like Parcheesi and like come over to my house and we'll play Scrabble or we'll play Chinese checkers, like the old school kind of games that I torture my children with. So Heidi, why don't you tell us what kind of games you like to play?
So I play a little bit of everything. So I don't know how much you guys know about the genres of gaming.
nothing.
Nothing.
Yeah, I figure. Um, I so I guess I'll just go through a couple of them. They're all acronyms, most of them. Um, one group of games that I'll play is called RPGs, that stands for role-playing games. Um, so I'll play games like Mass Effect or Skyrim. Basically, you play a character that has some kind of predetermined story and background, and it's in a world. Could be fantasy or sci-fi or medieval, literally anything. But there's some kind of a story that you, as your character, play through. Maybe you have dialogue decisions or not. Maybe you can impact the end of the game. They're all a little bit different, but the key aspect of RPGs is the story. And I also play JRPGs, so that's an RPG but made in Japan. I'll play life sims like Sims 4 and Animal Crossing. I play a little bit of racing games. One first-person shooter, which is shortened down to FPS. And then I spend a lot of my time playing Minecraft, which is a sandbox game.
Okay, that one I've heard of. But that's been around for a while.
Very
right?
well known.
Okay, I have a question. This role-playing game, are you playing against another player? How does that work?
Oh, that's a great question. Yeah, so there's different categories of games based on who you're playing with. So a role-playing game is generally you're not playing online, you're not playing with other people. The only other characters in the game are known as NPCs or non-playable characters. So they're not run by real people. They're just based off of the game's programming.
All right. Okay. And then the JRPG is so it's, are you playing all of a sudden I can't speak the English language. Is it Japanese characters? Is this developed in Japan? I mean, what's the difference between RPG and JRPG?
Yeah, so the primary difference is just that it's an RPG that was developed and produced in Japan.
Mm-hmm.
But it can also describe a type of game that is styled like a JRPG. So they tend to have particular game mechanics to them. There's a lot. We could spend hours talking about the different categories and all the game mechanics that are specific to each category. But the biggest one would be, I guess, as an example, most JRPGs will have some kind of a turn-based battle system. So everything is laid out when you battle so that you can see exactly when your character will take a turn versus the enemy. And there may be multiple enemies or multiple characters that you have to control. A lot of JRPGs also tend to be 2D. So they're a little bit more old school. Our American RPGs were actually based off of JRPGs in a lot of ways. Okay. Japan got ahead of the gaming scene before we did. I'm sure you guys know about Nintendo. They are the ones that came up with that. And it was originally a card playing company. And they got into video gaming and it came over to the US and became super popularized. So that's why we distinguish between the JRPG and the RPG. Even if a game didn't come from Japan, sometimes we'll say that it's a JRPG just because of the style.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Did you say 2B?
Yeah, sorry, two-dimensional.
Oh, you gotta, we are women of a certain age. You have to so you have to spell it out. I'm like, what is that? I've heard of 2B isn't there a channel or something? Anyway.
That's spelled TUBI.
Don't be laughing at me, Joy, because you were like, what is that? And you're like, thank God Cheryl asked. Okay.
Right. So Heidi, out of the list of the games that you rattled off for us that you play, do you have a favorite?
Oh, so that's difficult because my favorite is constantly changing. Okay. And I would say most gamers would agree with that because generally you're not going to play the same game over and over. So currently my favorite game is called Octopath Traveler 2, and it is a JRPG. So it's story based, and it's a pixelated game, and it's a two-dimensional scroller. So that means when you walk, the whole game scrolls with you as you walk.
Oh,
So it's not very
cool.
advanced looking.
Huh.
cool.
That is so cool. And then so it does change. That's interesting. How old were you when you started playing these games? And not like the games you're playing now, but like say, for example, Minecraft, I happen to know is a game that like elementary school age children will play and they get into it and they really like t-shirts and they've franchised the hell out of that stuff. So you can buy keychains and tchotchkes. But like how old were you when you started playing? And then describe for us a little bit how you got into the games.
Yeah, so my first memory of playing a video game, I guess, was before they called them video games. It was a CD-ROM of, I believe, Freddy Fish. And I was like 4 or 5. And it was just one of those games where, they do some little art drawing and they put it into the game and you can click on different things to interact with them or you can click to go to another area. But um, it was very, very basic and old. So I started playing those games, I mean, from as early as I can remember, on PC. And then they started coming out with games on the Game Boy. Um, so some of my tap dance classmates actually had a Game Boy, like one of those really old ones. It had like a little like reading lamp because they didn't have backlights in them back then. I mean,
Oh
super
wow.
old. Yeah, and so I got really interested watching them play these games. And then when I was 7 or 8, I decided I wanted a Game Boy Advance Lite. It was the first one that they had actually put a backlight in. Um, and you could plug the little game cartridges into the bottom. It was very small, very compact, smaller than most cell phones today.
Hmm.
Um,
Wow.
and yeah, and so I played that for years. And then because it was Nintendo, of course, I got into the Nintendo DS and the DS Lite. And of course, that extended to the Wii. Um, but I didn't really get into like PC gaming and understanding all the specs and all the gaming lingo and everything until I hit college. And it was my sophomore year, and some of my classmates in the physics department were gamers, and one of them tried to get me into a series of particularly difficult games. They're renowned for being one of the most difficult video games out there. Um, and so I decided to try that and didn't beat the game because it was too hard, but I was hooked. And just I couldn't give it up after that.
I know it's very addicting to for people. I don't mean like maybe to that level of using that word, but yeah, people are really into it. They're really into it.
So let
Yeah.
me ask you this, because um it kind of like leads into the next question I have is what do you think it is about the games that appeals to you and other players that like build like that started with the Game Boy and kept following the games as opposed to like maybe a kid who plays that what's that weird little worm game where you eat the worm gets bigger and bigger as you play it online?
I think you're talking
Anyway,
about Slither.io.
yeah, Slither IO. So Fiona used
Yeah.
to play Slither IO, but like, and then she occasionally plays Sims, but like I played Sims 2, but and I had to play on CD-ROM, but then I lost interest. So what do you think it is about you or your personality or the game that appeals to you and other players as opposed to people who maybe play an odd game here or there and never play again?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think it's hard to answer for everybody. And I think people are still trying to figure that out and do studies on gamers to figure out real motivation. But for me, I can say that a large part of it comes down to just pure escapism. Just like with a TV show or a book, it's just a way to use your imagination and kind of escape reality for a little while. And for some people, they happen to find the game that fits their personality and what works for them. And sometimes it takes longer, and some people don't ever find a game that works for them, or maybe none of them do. And so I think it just boils down to individual preferences, and how much gaming someone's really willing to do as well. A lot of people just have a hard rule of gaming is a waste of time, and they just refuse to do it. And other people have no limit to how much they're willing to game.
So is this something you do daily?
Yes, generally.
Okay. What's the longest have you ever taken a break from it, and how long was it if you took one?
I've never taken an intentional break, like
Just
where I said I
busy.
was game for yeah.
Yeah.
If life is busy, like or many times in college, especially during my junior year where I was just so busy, and even the first year in grad school I didn't game hardly at all, because I just had no free time. I was just constantly studying. Yeah, but other than that, I've never really sat down and gone, oh, I need to. It's never gotten to the point where I'm gaming 24/7.
And you're like,
Or
I've got to break this habit.
yeah, it hasn't turned into an addiction to the point where I'm like, okay, I need to like take a step back, or I'm gonna, this is gonna be bad for me.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting.
That is interesting. So let's talk about the cost. What is the cost associated with some of these games? How much would you say you spend daily, weekly, monthly, yearly? And then maybe kind of like talk a little bit about the cost, because I know there's also other things I've seen that you can buy, like these weird chairs you sit in, that not weird, but chairs you sit in that have like like acoustics on either side of speaker, so that you feel like you're, and the chair is like somehow, I don't know, is it a Bluetooth chair that like trembles when the game has you like on a bumpy road or
No.
something? And there's
That's cool.
keyboards. Like I remember one time, Heidi, you said you had a gaming keyboard, and I know there's like speakers and all kinds of things you can invest in to make the games more like realistic.
Yeah. So I'd say there's two different categories to stuff that you can get related to games. The first would be stuff that helps you play the game, but isn't really frivolous, I guess I would say. And maybe that's subjective since I'm a gamer. But I tend to think that items like keyboards and mice that have special buttons, or have faster connections, those will actually improve your gameplay experience. Whereas things like the gaming chairs that have speakers in them, and that's kind of like over the top. Like you don't need that to be able to enjoy the game, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
But yeah, these
What
things
about
can
like,
get pricey.
yeah, I was gonna say, are there like, do you have to buy like new plugins? Are there accessories? Is it like you buy credits to continue your adventure? Like what kind of costs are involved?
So most games are sold as is. So most games don't have microtransactions. I'm sure you've heard about the whole drama around microtransactions and companies trying to get extra money from their clientele. But most games are just going to be a single game. You buy it once. You don't have to pay anything extra, and then you download that game and you get to own it. Those games, they have a name. They're generally called AAA. They usually cost between $60 to $70. Sometimes they'll be $10 to $20 extra if you're pre-ordering, and often pre-ordering will come with extra in-game items that are exclusive to whoever pre-orders. So there's some kind of incentive attached to it.
Mhm.
And these games also will have something called DLC, which stands for downloadable content. So after you've bought a game, or what we call the base game, sometimes developers will release add-ons, extra content that you can then pay for to download that will incorporate into the game you already own and just add extra dimensions or storylines or areas to explore. And those can cost anywhere from, oh, I don't know, like usually $20 to $40. If it's a smaller game, sometimes it'll be like, $5 or $10.
So is there a game that you've pre-ordered that you're waiting for to come out?
Uh, I did pre-order the Hogwarts Legacy game. It already came out. That's the only game I've actually ever pre-ordered in my entire life, because they let you play it a week early. And so it was only $10 more than the base game price. So I thought it wasn't. I didn't feel like I was wasting a lot of money on it.
Right, right.
Interesting. So, hey, tell us a little bit about the online community for these games. Have you met cool, weird, odd, scary people? Do you continue to meet up and play with those people? Do you meet outside of these games for like meetups like at Comic-Con or Gamicon or whatever those cons are called?
Equivalent con is.
Yeah, so I don't know that. I mean, there are events for people in the gaming community, but I think they tend to be more geared towards either developers or surrounding esports competitions. Um, and there are people who get paid to play these games full time because they are the best of the best. And they will hold entire championships that are streamed to everybody and people can vote. It's almost like the fantasy football thing. We kind of have a similar thing in gaming, but it's different for each game. So there's a micro community within each game for that game. So it gets kind of complicated.
Yeah.
Most gamers aren't going to see each other in real life if they don't already know each other. I have a personal rule of not talking to people online. There are many games where you can just automatically have it set so that your voice chat is on when you enter the game so that you can talk with other people. These are generally in games where you have some kind of battle going on between teams that are all involving real people. So usually they're not going to have the non-playable characters or NPCs.
So
But
interesting. All of these acronyms. It's flooding my brain.
yeah,
But
the
but
Lido is very,
but that
very in depth.
no, that's so smart of you, Heidi, because that's something that I would be concerned about is you don't know who you're talking to. You don't know who you're giving your information to. So that's smart. I was going to say, do you think there's not like a gamicon, like Joy said, because people that online game might like the anonymity of just playing behind their computers and not necessarily, it's not like, Comic-Con is the whole, you want to get together and you want to do the whole cosplay thing and right. Um, so I'm thinking maybe there's that aspect that people like to kind of just stay behind the computer, or no, am I full of crap?
Yeah, no, I would say it's kind of half and half.
Yeah.
Some gamers are antisocial gamers and other gamers are social gamers. And there are a lot of people who actually will go to Comic-Con and dress up as a game character. So
Oh.
and a lot of these games were started from books or comics or some other source. So a lot of them, like The Legend of Zelda is really popular. People will go to Comic-Con and dress up as those characters, or Final Fantasy is a really popular game series they'll also dress up as. So there is a lot of cosplay related to these things, but we don't have our own dedicated gamer con, so to speak.
Right.
Well, we need to start it. Joy,
Yeah.
that is our ticket to retiring. Come
That's
on.
right. That's right. we'll say famous guest Heidi will be there,
Mhm.
and
She's our inspiration.
we'll see how many people show up. I just want to like throw in a little just kind of a little sidebar right here, but I my youngest daughter's piano teacher, his wife was like the manager of the indie bookstore in Raleigh, and she gives me stacks and stacks of books, and one of the books she gave me was called 88 Names by Matt Ruff, Ruff. And it was one of the best books I read during the pandemic. And it's about this guy who is a Sherpa or a paid guide to online role-playing games, like popular games like Call to Wizardry or The Realms of Asgarth, um and he has a new client. They're always high name, big name, like secret clients. They're usually wealthy, famous people, and they have like names like Mr. Jones or Mr. Smith, and he leads them through these games. And he's contacted by somebody in this person's, like, social circle or financial circle, and he's, they wire him like hundreds of thousands of dollars to do this. And he starts to suspect that Mr. Jones is really the North Korean dictator Kim Jong Un, who's got this huge interest in virtual reality gaming. It has more to do with power than entertainment, and it was a really good book. So anyway, if anyone out there is enjoying this podcast, who enjoys online gaming, role playing games, like, I definitely suggest go find this book. It's called 88 Names. It's really, really good. So anyway, sorry about the
Interesting.
sidebar. Um, so Heidi, why don't you tell us something that would surprise us or interest us or alarm us about this game? Maybe something that, like middle-aged people don't know about these games. We hear plenty about games, whenever there's a violent shooting or some kind of like horrible thing, and then next thing you know, the House of Representatives is having 6 days of interviews and commentary because all the internet games is making kids so violent nowadays. So maybe tell us something that would interest us or alarm us or surprise us about these games.
Yeah, well, something I found kind of surprising, a lot of people will talk about how few women are playing video games, or how the representation is pretty small. But actually, as of 2022, about 48% of gamers are women,
Oh,
which is,
wow.
Wow.
yeah, very surprising because there's not a whole lot of representation. And most people, when they game, will assume that it's a man that's gaming. And especially in online gaming, you see it a lot in chats and stuff. Or another reason why I don't voice chat, because sometimes you'll get into a call with somebody, and if they realize you're a girl, they will start like making fun of you and like throwing jabs at you.
Really?
And
Huh.
yeah, there are entire YouTube channels that are dedicated to trying to show how awful male gamers can sometimes be to female gamers,
That
which is
is
really sad.
ridiculous. Oh my God. That is
Yeah,
ridiculous.
That's crazy
yeah, but
because
there's a
I
lot
gotta
more
just
of us
tell
than they
you,
think.
I don't play online games, but I am this house's like kick-ass Chinese checkers player. I could clean up anybody in this. Because you played with me, Heidi. Like, I'm badass. Like, I mean, I let Heidi beat me at Christmas a couple times,
Oh,
but
you
most
let
times,
her.
Don't
Oh,
let
you
me.
let
most
her.
of the
Okay,
times I am OG, like kick-ass Chinese checkers
let.
here. So there. Um, so let me ask you, with all of the, stuff that's on the internet and lately social media, there's been a lot of buzz about social media and the effects it has on children. Do you feel like these first person shooter games have prompted or increased in any way the number of school shootings that we've had?
So, resounding no. And I would say that a lot of people don't actually look into this issue because they're not gamers, but anybody who games very adamantly wants to know, like, is this really true? Is this actually causing people to go and be violent? And all the research says no. Uh, for example, I actually just found a quote from a paper that was published in 2016, and these researchers, Johnston and Joy, funny enough, said that they
It
would
was
argue
me.
yeah, they would argue identification with prior mass shooters made famous by extensive media coverage, including names, faces, writing, and detailed accounts of their lives and background, is a more powerful push towards violence than mental health status or even access to guns. And they basically found that it just, the media coverage is the thing that is driving this. It's not anything else. Or it might be a conjunction of other things, right? But why the sudden uptick? And it goes hand in hand with the media coverage, and kids are very impressionable. And we saw this phenomenon happen with that show 13 Reasons Why. I don't know if you guys heard or saw that.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, right after, everybody was like, oh my goodness, this show just caused a whole bunch of suicides. Kids immediately started emulating, making recordings and tapes, and then killing themselves, and then sharing those tapes, just like the show did, because it was so strong. And I, at the time when I watched it, I was only 22, um, or 21, and it made me depressed. And I was shocked. I had to stop watching it in the middle of the first season because I could not, suddenly I was only thinking about the show and thinking about how depressing life is, and everything around me was the same as it had been before the show came out. So yeah, I definitely think that, video games are not the cause of this, and they don't exacerbate the issue. But for sure, I mean, if you are somebody who is prone to violence anyways, and you are taught that through video games that it's okay to let that out, then maybe, the video game would play a part. But I think generally it boils down to other issues in society and the media coverage that contribute to the mass shootings.
Right. So do you think you'll be playing these games in 5, 10, 20 years? Or similar
Yes.
games?
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, off the top of my head, I know there's a bunch of games that I'm playing now that I probably will never pick up again. And they're meant to be that way. It's just like some books, you pick up a book and it's really great and you read it, but you really don't need to read it again and again and again.
Right.
But then there are some games that constantly change, like Minecraft, which, being a sandbox game, means that you can do whatever you want, and they're constantly updating it. So, like just recently, they introduced a new biome and new items in the game and different things that you can go and search for. And the game is essentially limitless. They actually timed how long, or they calculated how long it would take for somebody to walk in game to the very edge of the game, and it was something like a couple thousand lifetimes or something like that. It's ridiculous.
Whoa. Well, you know what? I know nothing about gaming, but I knew the name Minecraft. So they must have been around, there's around a long time, and the only way they can sustain their presence in the gaming industry is to continually change it, right? Because I was surprised when you said Minecraft. I was like, hey, I know that one. I know that one. I had
Yeah,
known nothing about online gaming, so they must have done a really great job at just keeping everybody interested in it.
I
yeah,
also
they've
love that you
updated.
call it a sandbox game. I've never heard of that term before.
Yeah, I think because it's not generally, it's not something that we were really good at making. Um, like it in my childhood, even. It's kind of relatively a new thing in the history of gaming, because it requires a lot of processing power. So Minecraft specifically, the way that they built the game, um, the game is essentially keeping track of every single block. because you can destroy and place new blocks anywhere you want in the world. And it has to remember that. And it has to build the world to show you on your computer. So for a long time, I could barely play Minecraft because my computer wasn't strong enough, because it takes a lot of processing power. So some of these games, we kind of just have to wait for, kind of like VR. We've had the idea of VR for years. I mean, I would even argue that the closest prediction to VR that we've had was Star Trek, and they first introduced holodecks in their show in 1974, and we didn't get VR until 2012. So that's about 40 years that we thought of it before it actually happened. And even today, we're still thinking, oh, what if we had a VR set that you really feel like you're in it? So I don't know if you guys heard of that movie, Ready Player One.
No. Oh, I haven't.
Basically, it's about a guy, or it takes place in a world where they have VR, but they also have body suits. They call them haptic, where they give you responses so that you actually feel physically like you're in the game. So you can feel pressure, and you can feel a breeze blowing by, or if you get smacked into something, you're going to feel it. And so now they're actually trying to make these suits, and they've started with gloves, and they're going to work their way all the way back. So yeah, I think they're just going to get better and better.
That's so cool.
Wow.
So Heidi, what priority do these games hold for you? For example, would you rather go on a date, or go to dinner or party or show or something, go dancing, or stay home and game?
Ooh, so that's hard. Where I'm at currently, I'd much prefer to just stay home and game, because if I'm not gaming, then I have to do work. But when when I have access to a lot of things to do in town, or my friends are out and going and doing stuff, I'd much rather do that than just sit at home and play a video game. But sometimes video games can be social as well. Like my brother and I will sometimes call each other on Discord and just chat for hours and play video games. Not even the same game, just two different games at the same time, and just chat. So yeah, sometimes I would prefer to stay in game if it's social. But generally, if there's something else to do, I'd much rather go out and do that.
So there are people that get paid to test these games. That's what they do, right? They get paid to test it and try to find any quirks or any, what's the word I'm looking for, when there's like a dysfunction, like a flaw. They're looking for flaws in the game. Yeah, bugs. Thank you, bugs. Such a hard word. So would you want to do that if you were offered, or if you could?
Ooh. For me personally, no. As much fun as that would be, and it would be so much fun to be able to get paid to play video games all day. But when it comes down to it, just for me personally, not speaking for anybody else, that wouldn't bring me a great feeling of purpose in life. Because while video games are great, I tend to want to do something that's a little bit more giving, in a guaranteed positive way to society. So I wouldn't feel comfortable spending my career gaming, just because to me that doesn't really produce significant positive changes in the world.
But I bet your brother would love to do that for a living.
Oh, for sure, yeah. He would be great at it. He'd be better at it than me.
Great at it. Oh my God, he would love that.
God, Joy, if only we could be paid to test like new items on Taco Bell, on Taco Bell menu. Wouldn't that be cool?
Just none of that Alpo smelling beef crap. That stuff is so
That
gross.
mystery meat is what makes it. Have you ever had a taco from Jack in the Box? That taco at Jack in the Box, I don't know if they still make it, but that is a real mystery, but it's so good.
Yeah, meow meow. Like, ew, it's so gross.
Anyway, we took it up enough time with the mystery meat.
That's right. So, Heidi, are there any special precautions that you take for personal safety with regards to these games?
Yeah, so one I mentioned before, I don't voice chat with people I don't know. That's just a personal rule. A lot of people do. Um, uh, Another rule, when this is something that everybody should do, which is not give their real name as their gaming name. So generally, when you start a game, you have to pick some kind of a gamer tag, is what we'll call it. Um, and it's generally not a good idea to put any of your real name in that tag or anything that could be identifying. So I just have one name that I pick for all of my games, and it's the same for all of them. And then, of
Oh,
course, never giving any personal identifying, locating information
right.
in chats. Obviously, that just goes for online. Um, and then there, in some games, there's a mechanic called partying up. So, like in Rocket League, which is basically soccer but with cars, um, you can have teams of generally up to three. So sometimes when you finish a match, if you did really well with a teammate that you were randomly placed with, sometimes they'll want to ask you to stay in their party, and that's called partying up. And I, just as a general rule, don't party up with people I don't know because that runs the risk of them wanting to become in game friends and then real friends and then want to talk. And people tend to, some people in the gaming community are just like people out in the real world and they don't know when to stop. So
Mm.
I've received, in the past, I used to, party up with whoever, and I received a couple of chats here and there, like, "Oh, why won't you talk to me? I don't bite," or like, "Oh, like, are you scared to talk to other people?" Just kind of like goading, like kind of passive aggressive
Mm,
comments. And
Yeah,
so I just don't even engage with that. I don't even
yeah.
want to open that door.
yeah.
Well, if they're
Well,
using that as some way to entice you to engage with them, that's not the right way. Like, hey, why aren't you
Yeah,
talking
yeah,
to me? It's
exactly.
like,
well, I
Yeah,
just have
that's
to
not
tell
a good
you,
flag.
this doesn't have anything to do with gaming, but I am an active person on Twitter. I used to be much more active like during election years, but I kind of backed away from Twitter in the last couple of years just because it's like a cesspool of negativity. But anyway, I was showing Gabe the other day. I'm like, look, I go, guess who just followed me on Twitter? I said, it's the real Daryl Hall from, Daryl Hall and John Oates from Hall and Oates,
what?
Yeah. I was like, look at that. And literally in like with while I'm saying this to him, I get like he slides into my DMs with like, hey, what's up? And I'm like, oh God. I was like, what the
Joy,
actual hell? And
you
so I
did
like
not.
I had to block him and then I had to like delete him. And I was like, what is wrong with people? I was like, Gabe was laughing hysterically. He's all, oh well, he's all, you can't go for that. No,
Yeah.
no.
Joy, you did not actually think that was. Please tell me you
I
didn't.
did. I got so excited. I
Oh
was
my
like, look,
God.
look,
Oh,
I can no longer talk to you. Come on. You're so crazy. Oh my God.
but it's super easy to get fooled by these
look.
things. You never know.
Right.
Oh,
And
Joy.
now we know why when those people call from those scamming call centers, it's literally 10 seconds in, and I'm like, my password is,
Yeah,
and my
exactly.
bank account number is.
There's a reason these, scammers are still around. It's because they get business from
Oh,
people like
God.
you. Joy, you
Well,
crack
just as
me up.
long as they're not named Daryl Hall. Hey, so Heidi, is there anything else you want to tell us or share with us about online gaming that we maybe forgot or we missed?
Um,
How is she going to know what we forgot, Joy? Go ahead.
oh, well, actually, so we going back to the prices, So I know that there's a reputation for gaming being really expensive. But just for perspective, it can actually be pretty cheap. So my gaming mouse only cost me $50. My gaming keyboard only cost me $70. And they're decent. But the upward price of these things can range anywhere from like $500 to like thousands of dollars.
Yeah, so you don't have to pay an arm and a leg. And once you get it, you have it. It's not like you have to, well, unless it's like they're like Apple and they come out with a new iPhone every 3 months.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
it's definitely you can buy shoes that are way cheaper than that.
Yeah.
Heidi, is there a game about shoes? Because Joy's on. She's in.
Oh, there are games about everything.
Oh, I
I
used to play this game where you would go into the store, you were like the shop owner, and you put those shoes out and the clothes out, and then people would come in and buy them, and you'd have to keep putting more shoes. And it was exhausting. I would literally log into the game, and all the shoes and the shirts and the dresses would be gone. And I'd be like, oh God. I was like, I just wanted to look at the shoes. I was like, why do you have to keep buying them all?
Maybe that'll help you with your shoe addiction. Playing that game.
or maybe it'll make it worse.
Yeah, maybe it'll make it worse.
Oh,
Oh
my
my
gosh.
God. Well, Heidi, thank you so much
This
for
was
chatting with us. As much as we
Yeah.
would love to chat with you all day long, there
Oh.
has to be a start and a stop to each one of our
It was
podcasts.
so interesting though, because it's a whole world. Like there's all these little worlds that, I don't
Yeah,
know about. It's so fascinating.
it is. And thank you so much for being our first official guest
Yes.
to
Thank
help
you
us
so much for
scratch the
having me.
surface of online gaming. Because we wouldn't have known the answer to even like one of those questions.
No.
I won't
I was
lie.
still I
some
was
of them
still
up.
struggling with all the acronyms.
Right. I know.
Oh,
Me
we still
too.
struggle with the acronyms, and there are more coming every day because there are new types of games being invented. So don't feel bad for not knowing. It's constantly changing. I don't even know.
Oh my gosh, that's too
Do
much
they
for my
have
head.
do they have games about like having kids?
I mean, like you can have kids in the. There are entire.
Oh
There
yeah,
are
in
games
Sims. Remember, you can have a
for
baby in
breastfeeding.
Sims.
No, I remember Joy. I remember you playing Sims when we were working in like 1996.
Yeah. You know what I used to do? I used to like if I'd have a 3 or 4 day weekend, I'd buy all my favorite like instant ramens and cup of noodles and like chips and stuff, and then and a bunch of Diet Cokes, and I get really really high, and I'd spend like 3 days in a row just playing Sims. It was the
God.
best. It was the best of times. It was the worst of
Worst of
times.
times.
I bet you didn't know that. Well, I guess we're gonna have to end things here. Hey, if any of you out there in podcast listening land have any fun gaming stories, feel free to send us a message. We don't know how that happens, but find us somewhere on Spotify, and I'm sure there's a messaging ability or whatever. Or not, just listen and think about what games you like to play. And, if you want to read a book about it, you can go look for that, that book that I shouted out. But thanks again, Heidi. And
Thank you,
we'll be
Thank
back
you.
next week with more murder.
Yes, thank you for listening, everyone.